Hey, welcome or welcome back to the stash. You might be sitting there, wondering to yourself what some of life's worst guarantees. Some might say taxes, war, death even, but I'd go further. I think that life's worst guarantee is pretty simple. It's that Zeb Wells' The Amazing Spider-Man will always somehow get worse. Even for this issue, the main story wasn't anything that offensive at all. In fact, there were one or two, dare I say, okay things within it. But then in typical Zeb Wells fashion, he just ruins it all. In this case, the real offensive part has to do with the bonus story, but we'll get into that much later. I guess the only silver lining is that Zeb Wells will finally leave the title after issue 60, but we've still got a solid 2 months before that happens. Going into this issue, my expectations were as low as they possibly can be, and after reading this comic, I was somehow just even more tired. I mean, seriously, the extra story especially sent me spiraling. How did it possibly get worse, you might be asking yourself? Well, be sure to join us today as we go over The Amazing Spider-Man issue 56, the return of Tombstone, and the one known as... Paul? But before we get into that, I just want to take a quick second to let you all know that here at The Stash we are trying to reach 3,500 subscribers before the end of the month. I know it's a huge ask, but with your help, I know we can do it. So if you're new around here and you like Spidey or just comic content in general, feel free to stick around and maybe hit that subscribe button. But with all that being said, let's get straight back into the video. The would-be wedding of Randy Robertson and Janice Lincoln kicked off a series of events that reshaped the entire criminal underworld of New York City. The attempted assassination of Janice's father, Tombstone, during the ceremony effectively called off her wedding and set in motion a citywide gang war as she struck out for revenge as her alter ego, the Beetle, and the other gangs squabbled to fill in the power vacuum. During the war, Tombstone allied with Spider-Man to save his daughter from going too far, but when the final battle between Beetle's and Madame Masque's forces came, Tombstone betrayed Spider-Man to become the new Kingpin of Crime. Spidey didn't take the heel turn too well, but rather than take Tombstone down, Spidey has been playing the trickster and ruining Tombstone's reputation with the other gangs, making it seem like his alliance with Tombstone is ongoing. Lincoln, however, is not very happy with this situation. So our story begins with a very small flashback. During this we go back to the days that Tombstone was under Wilson Fisk's employ. The Kingpin decides it's a lovely day for some hunting and even turns the trip into a mini lesson for Tombstone. He explains the lion's survival instincts, an instinct that would allow the host to kill their own flesh and blood if need be. Lonnie thinks it's messed up, but Fisk disagrees. He asks him whether he would kill a child in order to stay on top. Fisk coldly replies with, "I'd kill my own if it came to that." Fast forward back to the present day and we see Peter and Randy hanging out. He's on crutches now ever since he got shot, and it's just nice to see him and Randy just get to actually act like friends, even if it's just for a page or two. Pete heads out, however, there's someone else who's been hiding the whole time. Who would have guessed it's Janice Lincoln? The pair have seemingly made up from their last eventful meeting. Now, for the first time in forever, we finally get some good old-fashioned overthinking while web-swinging. Man, I miss this trope. Granted, it's only for a page, but at least it's something. Peter's got a lot on his mind after all the recent battles and conflicts he's been plagued with, and he's deciding what is and what isn't a loose end within his life. He counts the Green Goblin stuff as one because although he prepared the best he could, it still came back to haunt him. A part of his guilt is feeling like he just let it hang for way too long than it needed to, which makes him ask himself, would Randy have gotten hurt if I had dealt with Tombstone a lot quicker than I actually did? We head to Harlem now where we go into the middle of an arms deal. Kareem and White Rabbit are like Lonnie's enforcers here almost and set out the guarantees for those buying. They accept and prepare to load them into the van, and the main guy is just still a little bit sore about the way things are going and how in essence he misses the Kingpin, especially after the rumors of Tombstone and Spider-Man working together. But say his name and he shall appear. Spidey makes light work of the thugs and makes the entire thing seem like one massive scam so Tombstone can keep the weapons and their cash, which causes an uproar and only adds more fuel to the fire. Afterwards, Spider-Man is still left with some doubt even after this successful mission, because is all he doing just resulting in yet another loose end? Meanwhile, Tombstone is just trying to enjoy his dinner while he's interrupted with the recent news. He knows it's now time to make a move, with his target being a certain Peter Parker. The next day, Pete heads to the Daily Bugle upon Robbie Robertson's request to see him. Things have seemed to have changed big time around the office with just so many new faces, and once they finally get down to business, Robbie informs Peter that although he wasn't meant to tell anyone, he knew it was something he had to do. He tells Peter that Randy and Janice are seeing each other once again. To Peter, this is yet another loose end, so he sets out to find Janice and the two share a very important talk. We quickly change scenes to see Tombstone and his gang. They know that the power is slowly shifting, but Lonnie plans to do something to show everyone exactly why he's the man in charge. It's a rainy night. Peter is heading down the street until Randy Robertson, filled with rage, shouts for him. He's beyond furious. He just found out that Spiderman put Janice in jail, and he even believes that Pete was in on it the whole time. Peter maintains his composure. A car pulls up to their side and the window slowly rolls down and reveals Tombstone sitting there. He tells Peter to get into the car. Randy, still blinded by his anger, disrespects Lonnie, a move he might live to regret. Peter assures Randy it's fine and tells him to call his friend to let him know where he is. While in the car, the two share a conversation mostly about all the recent events within the book, as well as how much of a pain Spidey has been for Tombstone. He needs to send them a message to the underworld. Unfortunately, Peter Parker will be that message. Now, without giving away his Spider-Man, Pete tries to outmaneuver Tombstone, although he must take some very hard hits. It clearly isn't working, so new plan, run for it, but nope, he's dragged right back in. In a last-ditch effort to stall, Peter tries to tell him one more thing. That card he gave Randy, it wasn't Spider-Man's number, and with the perfect timing, the car is sent into a frenzy. Tombstone this time is dragged out to reveal that the number was for She-Hulk and Luke Cage, and they mean business. They beat the crap out of Lonnie, and then to make matters worse for him, Spidey even manages to join in on the fight. The police quickly arrive and take Tombstone off. Later on in court, Lincoln tries to plead not guilty, of course, but to much of his surprise, their opposing side requests to bring forth a witness who can very well send Tombstone away for a very long time. He gives a side-eye to Peter, but his smug smile tells him it's not him. The door opens and Randy walks through. Lonnie feels set. He knows how much of an easy target he would be to scare, but Pete wouldn't do that, especially not to his friend. The person he got was Janice, his own daughter. He was sure this was the best way to get back at Tombstone, but it seemed to do more than he'd ever guess. The eyes never lie, and his eyes are showing something very, very dangerous. But now that that's done, it's time for the backup stories. The first extra tale is pretty much just set up for the events that just took place within this issue, so I'll try to breeze past this one. We start off with the Rhino actually going on a date, and you know she's wifey material because she sometimes roots for the villains. Sort of funny how this is the only scene directly linked from the previous issue. We don't even see Shay in this, but whatever, at least it's something, I guess. Spidey interrupted She-Hulk, who was on her way to work, to talk about something. However, they got interrupted too, so the pair had to quickly take down Bulldozer. Afterwards, he explains the situation about Tombstone to Jen, but she makes the point of no one would work with the vigilante and that he'd need to find a proxy. Well, obviously she hasn't been keeping up with her Daredevil comics. Anyway, she's going to be late for Ned Leeds' hearing and makes her way. Peter almost forgot all about it too and quickly rushes there as well. Jen, being the good lawyer that she is, wins the case, resulting in Ned finally being a free man. Peter gives his congratulations and support, however Leeds is being very hasty towards Peter, giving him nothing but attitude at every chance. After he has enough of the belittlement, he goes after Jen to talk about what her and Spider-Man just went over. Peter explains that he's the proxy, and so she gives him 2 cards, one containing her personal number if he is ever about to have his head ripped off by a certain Tombstone. Now for the next story called Responsibility, this is the one I mostly take issue with. We begin with this lame attempt at normalizing Paul within the books. Peter just finished his visit at their apartment because according to him, Paul's chicken korma is always worth the trip. The next day, Paul is heading towards the Bronx, and as we go along his journey, we get a short montage showing how cool and kind he is towards those around him. He finally arrives at his destination where we meet a man named Kale. He doesn't recognize Paul, however the two have some history, especially in relation to their time on the other dimension. This issue is mostly a flashback about how Kale was seriously injured due to Paul's dad going insane, and because of all that, as well as how much of a nice guy Paul is, he ends up completely paying for Kale's procedure. He thanks him for this incredible act of kindness, and Paul makes his way back home. Okay, before you start throwing fruit in my face, just let me explain. This main plot was probably as good as it gets when it comes to a story written by Zeb Wells. Now does that mean it was really enjoyable and actually something worth of value? God no, not even close, but in comparison to his other issues, this was by far the one I could handle the most. I think when it comes to the Amazing Spider-Man Volume 6, the highlight, I guess you could say minus Paul and MJ, would be their stories which kicked off this run, which had Tombstone as the main bad guy. So to see them go back to that and begin the conclusion was something that for me made it just more bearable at least. Zeb Wells within this issue seems to have remembered that Peter actually has a brain, so it was refreshing to see him outsmart Tombstone in a fight, especially in a situation of complete danger. And last video I complained about the absence of the inner monologue, a trope that's a must within Spidey books, and I'm glad to see he remembered how to write that as well, because like I said last time, it gives us some valuable insight within the story, and here it's no different with Peter feeling such a great sense of responsibility about his loose ends. I enjoyed that aspect of the book if I'm being honest, and I'm glad to see him just talking to himself again. The small issue I do have with this though is that it contradicts the last issue with the way he handled the Rhino and Screwball situation, which surprisingly a lot of you were okay with. It was interesting to hear some of your point of views and opinions on that video. So yeah, who would have guessed that Mr. MNstash would actually have something somewhat positive to say about Zeb Wells' writing? Well, it was fun while it lasted, so let's get back to our regularly scheduled complaining. Listen, when it comes to John Romita Jr., I'll forever be grateful for his work and impact within Marvel Comics. Hell, my profile picture is his art. At his peak, he's definitely up there as one of my personal favorites, and titles he's worked on like Spider-Man and Daredevil simply wouldn't be the same without both Romita's influence. But with that being said, I unfortunately think it's time for John Romita Jr. to stop. Maybe just stick to some special variant covers at best, because this is just not it. I mean, within this issue alone, there's so many panels that make me question how an artist of his pedigree can fail to understand not only how a human body works, but even his own art style. It's not just his stuff on ASM that's been really poor as of late as well, because he's been doing all the covers for the latest Daredevil volume, and even there, it's still not good enough. I promise when I say I am a massive fan of his work, but I'm just not delusional enough to see his past work with his current stuff. John Romita Jr., you've had a good run, okay? And I don't want to see you turn into Lightning McQueen. I think it's time to pass the torch to someone new. Unfortunately, this just isn't worthy enough of a standard, especially for a title as prestige as The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, I was going to say what is the point of this shitty story, but then I feel like we should all know by now. This was Nick Lowe and Zeb Wells' brilliant attempt at trying to not only normalize Paul being liked, but also a massive FU to all the fans. You can literally feel the pure spite just radiate off the fucking issue as well. It's no wonder why Mary Jane oddly looks exactly like her Ultimate counterpart. I'm honestly sick to death by the entire concept of Paul, especially when they try to bring it all into the range of there's no bad blood between the three of them. I can't stop thinking about how the only reason they're even together is because Paul stopped MJ from going with Peter through the portal. Their entire relationship is built on fake children and MJ being trapped. This story as well was just such a lame attempt at trying to make Paul look like the kindest man on earth, as well as making it seem like he totally wasn't culpable for aiding his father in genocide. We all know it's something he did, but according to Nick Lowe, we just read the comics wrong, so oh well. When it comes to the Paul and his entire story, especially the one from this issue, it all comes off so incredibly tone-deaf and ignorant. Having Peter be all buddy-buddy with MJ and Paul has got to be one of the most thing within this entire volume. No human being would actively want to spend time with their ex-girlfriend who dumped him and the man she dumped him for. It's just beyond stupid and shows that Wells and Lowe generally have no clue how people work. If Peter for some reason didn't have feelings for her anymore and they mutually ended things, then I could somewhat see how this could actually happen. It's still really sad, but it could, so that's something. But here we have the very opposite. She chose Paul over Peter, and poor Peter clearly still loves her. Seeing him third wheel with the two is just so pathetic. What this story should have been was a simple backup plot involving Peter and his new girlfriend Shay, where we see them build more of a foundation together. Remember her? Because the writers clearly don't. Overall, overall, when it comes to the Amazing Spider-Man issue 56, I'm mostly very annoyed with it. When it comes to the main plot, I gotta say, I definitely noticed some sort of improvements when it came to the writing, however, it was still nothing to shout home about. I appreciated finally seeing some classic Spidey tropes once more, but it's just unfortunately nowhere near enough to make it a good story. The responsibility plot, on the other hand, has got to be one of the most pointless and insulting things they've done within this entire volume. I'm sick to death of Paul, and the entire series would just greatly benefit if we never see him again. Believe it or not, I genuinely hope that Zib Wells can make something that's half decent for his final story, but I doubt he's got enough talent to even write 2 okay at the very best issues in a row. And the sad thing is, when I look at this title, The Amazing Spider-Man, all I can now say to myself is, oh, how the mighty have fallen. But that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, because here, any support means so much. I'd love to hear what you thought of this issue down below in the comment section. We can start a conversation, and be sure to tune in next time. Same web time, same web channel. Thank you guys again for watching, and see you in the next one.